Good morning, children. Welcome back to the lesson Weathering the Storm in Ersama. That is coming through safely the storm in Ersama. Okay. We already had 2 sessions on it, and we discussed about the effect of cyclone that hit Orissa in the year 1999 and in the month of October that killed thousands of people and devastated hundreds of villages. And the real character, the real story and the real character, Prashant of 19 years old, was at his friend's house when the super cyclone occurred, and everywhere it was flooded, and even his friend's house was under water up to neck deep, and they took refuge on the roof of the house. From there they started eating tender coconut to survive from starving, and after 2 days Prashant decided to vacate the place in order to reach his village to see whether his family members are alive, but his family members denied him, requesting him to stay back a little while longer. But Prashant was so determined, and with equipped himself with a sturdy stick, he started his journey back to his village, and on the way he could see uncles of his friends, two uncles, and they decided to go together, and the scene was macabre, very unpleasant. They could see carcass of carcass of animals and corpses of men, women and children floating, and finally Prashant reached the place where his house was stood once, and he could not find any part of the house. Only some remnants of the house was twisted in the branches of trees just visible above the dark waters. Then he decided to go to the Red Cross shelter. There he could find his maternal grandmother, and grandmother was very happy to see the grandchild, thinking that he was dead and gone. And it was a miracle for both the parties, because both of them thought each other that the other party got killed in the flood and cyclone. And slowly Prashant came to know that 2,500 strong crowd was there in the shelter, and they were all hungry. So immediately he decided to turn himself as a leader if no one else did. And he organized a group of youth and elders to jointly pressurize the merchants to part with the rice, and they brought the rice and prepared food. And for the first time in 4 days time, all the survivors of that super cyclone had food for their bellies. And next task that was organized by Prashant and the youth was cleaning the shelter of filth, urine and vomit, okay, and removing the carcasses, right? So there we stopped, dear children. Now we are at page number 40, the last paragraph. I request all of you to open the textbook and to see page number, On the fifth day, a military helicopter flew over the shelter and dropped some food parcels. It then did not return. The youth task force gathered empty utensils from the shelter. Then they deputed the children to lie in the sand left by the waters around the shelter with these utensils on their stomach to communicate to the passing helicopters that they were hungry. The message got through, and after that the helicopter made regular rounds of the shelter, dropping food and other basic needs. So dear children, now Prashant as a leader is venturing himself to arrange food for the survivors of the super cyclone. On fifth day, a military helicopter flew over the sky and dropped some food parcels. So it is very natural that the people will help each other at the time of crisis. So a helicopter came there and dropped some food parcel, but afterwards it did not return. So what did the youth task do? They gathered empty utensils from the shelter. Then they deputed some children to lie down on the sand, keeping the utensils on their stomach, so that the passing helicopters can see that these children are hungry and that message was conveyed, and after that helicopters started coming regularly and was dropping food and other basic needs. Okay children, this is what people generally do. Okay, and that is what is being performed here. Now you can see in the picture that people are helping each other in terms of cloth they are distributing, and in terms of food they are distributing, and you can also see the children lying on the place where water is not available now, and keeping plates or utensils on their stomach to convey the message that they are hungry. Okay, now next paragraph. Prashant found that a large number of children had been orphaned. What is orphaned? Who is an orphan? A person, a child who has lost his father and mother is called orphan. So many children are there, they became orphan. Anath. Okay, or anath we say. That means a child who has lost his father and mother. He brought them together and put up a polythene sheet shelter for them. Women were mobilized to look after them while the men secured food and material for the shelter. So what is how did Prashant look after the children, especially those who were orphaned? So he arranged women to look after them, mobilized. Okay, and what were the men mobilized? They were mobilized to find, secure, to obtain, to procure food and other materials for the shelter. As the weeks passed, Prashant was quick to recognize that the women and children were sinking deeper and deeper in their grief. So he could see women are also not happy. Why? Because they also lost their husbands. Many of them have lost their husbands, then they are very grief stricken. He persuaded the woman, he motivated the woman to start working in the Food for Work program started by the NGO, non-government organization. NGO stands for non-government organization. So these ladies were asked to work in NGO and to have food for wage. And for the children he organized sports events. And what did he do for the children? Sports events. What did he ask the women to do? Work in the Food for Work program. Okay, so children were taken to sports. He himself loved to play cricket, and so he organized cricket matches for children. To make children happy, he organized cricket matches. So question can be there, how did Prashant entertain the children? Or grief, children who were unhappy and were grief stricken, okay, were taken for cricket matches. Prashant engaged with other volunteers in helping the widows and children to pick up the broken pieces of their lives. Okay, Prashant arranged some volunteers to help the women and the children. The initial government plan was to set up institution for orphans and widows. So government, what did the government think about orphans and widows? They thought of setting up separate institution. What is that? To set up institution. What is institution? Firms, buildings for them separately. However, this step was successfully resisted, means stopped, as it was felt that in such institution children would grow up without love. So Prashant thought, if separate buildings are given to children, children will grow without love and widows would suffer from stigma and loneliness. And what would happen to those widows? Who is a widow? One who lost her husband. And one who lost wife is called widower. If you add er to widow, you will get the opposite of widow, widower. Okay, so would suffer from stigma. What is stigma? Disgrace. Write down, children. Stigma means disgrace. So they will get the disgrace or insult or kalank. What you call in Kannada, you may call it as kalank, I think. The stigma and loneliness. Prashant's group believed orphans should be resettled in their own community itself. So what is Prashant's view about the children? Those children should be resettled. What is resettled? They should be taken to their own community. For example, Verma to Verma community, for Gauda community, like the different communities will be there in the society. So children should be adjusted to that particular community so that they should not feel they are alone in the world. And possibly in the few foster families made up of childless widows and children would without adult care. So he also thought of those widows without children can take care of those children. That is also a good idea from Prashant's side. So this is the way Prashant helped the poor victims of that super cyclone. So what happened now? The last paragraph. It is 6 months after the destruction of the super cyclone. So how many months over now? 6 months over. This time Prashant's wounded spirit has healed simply because he had no time to bother about his own pain. Actually, Prashant could not think about his own pain or suffering. Why? Because he was helping others and he forgot his own problems. His handsome, youthful face is what the widows and orphan children of his village seek out most in their darkest hour of grief. So, even today, those children, those widows remember the beautiful or handsome face of Prashant. Why? Because he only helped these people by acting as a leader. So dear children, what about you? Can you take up this kind of responsibility in your life? Will you do like this? You may be saying yes or no, but through this lesson we have come to know helping others is a good act. Instead of praying lips, we should have helping hands. There are people, they only pray to God, but they won't help others. But there is a saying, instead of praying lips, we should have helping hands. So the story is over now. I hope all of you could get the story. And before we conclude for the day, let us make an immediate review of what we have discussed for the day. So dear children, we started with arranging food for the children from the passing helicopter. Once a helicopter dropped food parcels, but they did not return, and Prashant and the youth task asked the children to lie down on the ground with plates or utensils on their belly, only to communicate the passing helicopters about that they are hungry. And the message was got through. I mean, the message got through means conveyed, and they got regular rounds of airdropping of food. Then Prashant found that a large number of children had become orphans, okay, and many ladies or women became widows. So he thought of helping them and he asked the children to play cricket, and he even organized cricket match for them. Whereas for the widows and women, he asked them to work for food, work for a food for work program, okay, food for work program. And there was a suggestion from the government side to set up institutions separately for orphans and widows, but he resisted it, telling that children will grow without love in such institution, and the widows would suffer from the stigma of loneliness because they are alone, and they will suffer from psychological issues. So Prashant's group believed that orphans should be resettled in their own community itself, and those widows without children can look after some children. Okay, they can adopt the children. So now after 6 months of the devastation or destruction of the super cyclone, those widows, those orphans would remember the handsome face of this Prashant, the real hero of the story and the real story. Okay, so some of the word meanings are already mentioned here. You can write down in your notebook and learn. And questions like, what havoc has the super cyclone wreaked in the life of people of Orissa? How has Prashant, a teenager, been able to help the poor people of his village? How have the people of the community helped one another? What role do the women of Kalikuda play during these days? Why do Prashant and other volunteers resist the plan to set up institution of orphans and widows? What alternatives do they consider? I hope I discussed all the answers when I was doing with the text. I hope there is no doubt in it. And one more question is here. Do you think Prashant is a good leader? Yes or no? Can be yes, because he helped. Do you think young people can get together to help people during natural calamities? Yes, surely, definitely. So this is what the lesson is about, and now all of you can go through it, write down the question and answers. That's all, children. Have a nice day ahead. Thank you.